Okay, this is a 1967 TT Special. This bike was shipped to Johnson Motors in California, and this is the last year they made this model bike. Records are a little bit sketchy, but upwards of 1,000 of these bikes were made. The first 63s, 63 was the first year, and they made 316 of these TTs the first year, and they built that thing up and they made it from 63 to 67, but there's about 1,000 of these bikes made in 67. This is a true racing bike, hare and hound racing bike, flat track racing bike. You can see there's no lights on the front of the back, there's no muffler system on it, and there's only a tachometer on this. These bikes were predominantly in California. Most were left on the desert floor or cracked up during hare and hound races or flat tracking. The uniqueness to this bike centers around the compression ratio of 11 to 1 instead of the standard 9 to 1 that was in the T120Rs. This bike also has a 17 tooth sprocket in the gearbox, which made a little bit of difference on the racetrack. It's got an electronic transfer ignition to it, and it develops, instead of 48 horsepower, which is a T120R, this bike at 6,000 RPMs develops 52 horsepower, thus the advantage of why it was such a popular race bike back then. I've had this bike for 13 years. It's one of the first restored bikes that I owned. It's prime in my collection. It hasn't been started 13 years, and I asked my friend George Ratterman if he would take a look at this, go over it, oil it up, start it, see if there's any problems with it, and after that we'll take this back and put it inside a controlled environment and maybe do this 3 or 4 years from now. So, George, did you find anything in the bike that was unusual, or tell me what your overall assessment is?
Well, this bike, unlike the other ones that I checked, had oil in all the primary, the transmission, and the oil tank. It had not been drained like your other bikes. And I found all the oils to be at the right level, except for the oil tank, which had drained a little into the sump. I drained its sump, which is not unusual, and the oil in there was fine. The pickup screen was nice and clean. This bike has been stored very nicely, and everything looked, in the parts that I could see in the transmission, everything looks good. It being stored in that indoor environment.
Thank you, George. You want to start it up for us?
We're going to give it a try here.
Thank you, George. Now that this bike has been serviced, oil run through it, we know that it runs properly, timing is correct on it. We will drain the oil, take it back to the controlled environment, and again, several years from now, we'll do the same thing to keep this in peak working order. Thank you, George.
You're welcome.